Welcome to the Essential Self-Care Podcast, a show for those of us who are, let's face it, too busy for self-care. Each week, we bring you real-life stories and expert insights to help you create a kinder, more compassionate relationship with yourself. I'm your host, Dr. Sheetal Ajmani, a physician with over 2 decades of experience blending Eastern and Western well-being practices. As the founder of Radiant Living Institute, I'm here to help you reconnect with your own inner radiance. Remember, small changes make a large impact, and it all starts here. Please note, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. Always consult your own healthcare provider about your specific situation. Now, let's get started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Essential Self-Care Podcast. I am really excited to be in the podcast studio with my dear friend, Lindsey Anderson. We both met, it's been about a year now, actually. It feels like I've known you longer in a good way, in all of the good ways. But Lindsey and I met about a year ago, and it's through this program that we're both part of called Change Makers. Mm-hmm. So there is this incredible co-working space. It's so much more than a co-working space here in Norfolk, Virginia. We're actually here right now in the podcast studio in that co-working space. And they have a program. So quick shout out to Assembly and their Change Makers program. They have a program that is by application, and it is awarded to individuals who are making an impact in the community, in the local community, using creativity and innovation. And so I applied, Lindsey applied, we were both accepted into this program. Me for the work that I'm doing with Radiant Living Institute and Essential Self-Care, and Lindsey for the amazing work she is doing at Vision Driven 757. So Lindsey is the executive director of Vision Driven 757, and the work that you are doing with Vision Driven 757, just every time I hear about an event that you're putting on or another initiative that you're doing, I feel so inspired. I truly respect and admire the work that you're doing there. So the mission of Vision Driven 757 is they are really inspiring and empowering youth to reach their full potential and become catalysts for positive change in their communities. I know that's not the topic of today's episode, but can you just share maybe a sentence or two more about kind of what sort of events and what sort of things you do there? Because I just believe so deeply in your mission and the work that you're doing. And then we'll dive into today's topic.
Yeah, sure. Of course. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. This is amazing. I'm so excited for this conversation. Vision Driven is about empowering our youth. It is making sure that they get the opportunities that they need, the exposure that they need, and the support that they need. When I started the organization, I thought back to what did I need as a young person? And what can I give now as an older adult, And so it was just like, oh, no one taught me about scholarship applications. No one told me about credit cards. No one told me about loans. And then no one told me I could be anything I wanted to be, So not being in those rooms to see about CDLs or soft skills or hard skills or these different opportunities. So I've set out to ensure that our kids get exposure to as many opportunities as possible. If they know what they want to do, they feel supported from all sides, at home, in the community, in school, and then just making sure that they know how to fail forward. They know how to get back up. They know how to build their resilience, and they really believe in themselves, because if they're going to take over tomorrow, they have to be ready today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how all of that resonates with me so deeply. And, one of the things that you mentioned there and that I see you doing and that you mentioned was, bringing kids into these spaces that they may not be otherwise exposed to.
Yeah.
And I just think that in itself is also so powerful because, and I know this might sound cheesy, but the thing is, it's really true. If you can see it, you can believe it.
Yes.
And if you're not exposed to it and you don't see it, it's hard to know that can exist as a possibility for you. And so I just think that's so beautiful.
Thank
and
you.
Maybe we should do a whole episode about that.
We could. We sure could. I love the babies.
But really, we're here today to talk about journaling.
Yes.
As a modality for self-care. So a little bit more context here. Last fall, I hosted a special live podcast event to celebrate the 2-year anniversary of Essential Self-Care.
Yes.
That event, at least the panel discussion that was part of that event, was recorded and is on the podcast platforms. So you can definitely check it out. It's on YouTube and podcast platforms. But also, as part of that event, we had a live panel discussion and podcast recording. And then after that, we had self-care activity stations so that people who attended in real time in person were able to sort of break out into these different sort of self-care activity stations to experience different tools, different modalities, different forms of self-care, and kind of test it out and learn more about it. And I had invited Lindsey to facilitate a journaling session there. And, I got a lot of really, really positive feedback from people who sat in on your sessions. And, even just me observing, people were so engaged in your session. But then also afterwards, people came up and told me and gave me feedback and said, I really feel inspired to start journaling, or this is something that has been on my mind and heart for a while to try out. And now I feel like I have tools to actually start.
That's so cool.
Yeah. It
I
was
love that.
really powerful feedback. And so I really wanted to have you on the show to share some of that with our listeners who maybe weren't able to attend that live event. So why don't we start kind of from the beginning of how did you stumble upon journaling and what sort of difference has it made in your life? And then I would love to get into some sort of practical tips and tools, prompts, ways that our listeners can get started as well.
Yeah. So I call myself a scribe. I like to write, and then I retain it better if I do write things down. So you can ask my mom. As early as I could write, I had notebooks, and I've had notebooks all my life. And then usually they were full of ideas and things that I wanted to do, because I've always been this way, that I wanted to give back and I wanted to help the community. So I would write down these elaborate ideas or these elaborate plans on how I could help people, help the homeless, help the animals, help somebody. And I would keep them, and I would go back and refer to them, and I would keep them for years. I have so many spiral notebooks that are pages are missing and everything. So I've been journaling since I was a child, just because I didn't fully know that I was journaling then. I thought I was just putting my ideas to paper. But as I got older and I learned more about journaling, it was that's all journaling is putting your thoughts onto pages, and then you can revert back to them, right? You can see what you've talked about. I can go back at this point, because I don't even know where else some of my younger ones are, but I can go back at least 10 years and see what my thought process was, or see how I felt, and pull back from some of those ideas, oh, that was a really good idea. Now I have the capacity where I can do that. Then it was just a dream. Then it was just a thought. But now I really can do that. So it made it really cool and a full circle moment. And because I do so many things, because I'm involved and I have my hands in so many different pots, it helps me to stay sane. Getting everything out of my brain on the paper then lets me look at the paper and say, oh, this does make sense. Because sometimes when it's floating around there, it kind of seems scattered and you don't fully know what you're doing or what you're talking about. But when you write it down, you look at it, and it's oh no, I know where I'm going. I do know what I'm doing. I do know what I said I was going to do, and I actually am doing it. It gets you out of your own way. So that's what journaling has been for me. It's been a way to get out of my own way, or to devise a better plan, or to just kind of remember and reflect.
Goodness, you just highlighted so many, within your own journey, you just highlighted so many different benefits of journaling. First of all, I want to go back to and highlight, you gave a very nice, simple, easy to understand, approachable definition of journaling.
Yes.
And I really like that. This is essential self-care. I'm all about kind of keeping it simple, breaking things down into the smallest pieces possible so that you can actually take action on it.
Yeah.
So that self-care doesn't have to be some really big elusive thing, but it's actually something that can be very practical that you can take action on. And so the definition, one of a definition that you gave was it's really just putting your thoughts onto paper.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's all.
It's just putting thoughts down onto paper. I had a meeting earlier today that I was facilitating. I facilitate a group called the Female Founders Collective. And in that group, someone told me that they are, actively doing more of that as well. But that traditional journaling methods and writing things down on paper doesn't really resonate with them. So they see it as just putting notes down on the notes app on their phone or on their laptop. And that's what works for them. But it's that idea of, to put it very simply, putting your thoughts down onto pages.
Yeah.
Right? Whether that's pages in a notebook, pages on
digital pages,
real pages,
just putting it on. Yeah. Because it gets we do so much as people every day. From the moment that you open your eyes and the moment that you wake up, it's something so simple that can help either kickstart your day or end your day, or be like a moment of like breathing, reflection, and meditation in the middle of the day. So it's not as convoluted and not as like hard as sometimes people make it seem. But I also understand, like, if you're not naturally a writer, or naturally, like, I don't have a lot of words, or like I'm not big on like my thoughts and things, I get it. But there are ways that you can like slowly get into journaling, because it has a lot of beneficial factors to it. Kind of the things that I mentioned before, but it just helps you to stay organized more than anything. Well, for me specifically, I can say, because sometimes, even if it's not like a to-do list, it's just getting my feelings out. And now that my feelings are out, I can think a little bit clearer on what it is that I do have to do. So the beautiful thing about journaling is it is so multifaceted. A to-do list is journaling. It's putting your thoughts on paper. It's really simple. Making a grocery list, like, it's not even anything super extravagant. Like some folks like, oh, I need this leather-bound book with my quail pen. And, it doesn't have to be all that. Like you said, it's like opening your notes real quick and quick note to self, check on the kids or whatever. That's journaling. You can go more. That's just a great starting point, and you can build upon that if you really want to. So people do it every day without even realizing that they're journaling.
Before we go on, I'm excited to share something that could really make a positive impact on your life. Do you feel like you've lost touch with your true self? Reclaim Your Radiance is Radiant Living Institute's signature coaching program designed to help you reclaim your worth, renew your energy, and restore your happiness in your life, career, and relationships. This 6-module program has already helped countless women regain control of their lives. Whether by setting boundaries in challenging relationships, finding strength through life transitions like divorce, pivoting in their careers, or rediscovering their purpose as they embrace new chapters of their life. Start your journey today and begin living authentically, unapologetically, and radiantly once again. Head over to radiantlivinginstitute.com/reclaim-your-radiance to get started. I hope you found that helpful, and if you're ready to explore this more, check out the link in the show notes. Now, let's jump back into today's episode. I love that. That's something that I often guide people to do and to realize is that often we are doing some acts of self-care without even really realizing it. And so like one of the first steps is just to notice what you're doing, and notice how that is, already an act of self-care, or already a practice of journaling. And, you mentioned so many different benefits and uses for journaling, like getting your feelings out on paper so you can think a bit more clearly. Also getting your thoughts and feelings out on paper so you can look at it more objectively, as you mentioned, kind of like when it's all sort of swirling around in our head, it can be hard to kind of get a fresh perspective on it or look at it objectively. And that was something you mentioned. With my own experiences with journaling, I've also found that to be true, as well as just, even keeping yourself organized in terms of your day-to-day tasks or grocery lists or things like that. That can be a form of journaling. So we've talked about a bit about your personal experience with it, a bit about some very practical benefits of it, hopefully addressed some obstacles to getting started just within this conversation so far. Can you give us some, you've already shared some practical tips, but let's dive into that a little bit more deeply. If someone is interested in learning how to start to journal or incorporate it into their daily life, what would be some easy ways to get started?
So I would first think about what time of day is most convenient for you. I'm not a morning person, so I don't journal in the morning because I don't want to be up, So not even thinking about it, I don't want to. But like when I get to work, I'll take 10 minutes and I'll write out what I have to do. And sometimes if I have the time, I'll write out how I feel. And that's just for me to be in touch with myself. And then I have a starting point for what I'm going to do for my day. Sometimes people like to do it at night as a way to decompress and unwind. And then that also gives you an opportunity to reflect. So determining which part of the day would be more convenient, you try them all and see what works for you, because sometimes journaling in the morning, people do it with like their devotionals or like with their meditation, like they'll meditate, then they'll journal. And that's how they start their day on a positive foot. Sometimes, like I said, people want to decompress and reflect. So it just really, what works for you. Writing prompts, Pinterest, TikTok, even Instagram have several pages dedicated to writing prompts that they will give you. You can even go into ChatGPT and say, I'm this age, this gender, this is what I do in my day to day. Can you give me some good journal prompts? And it'll spit you out like 10 or 15 prompts for you to get started. Something that I recommend to people a lot is to brain dump. And that is literally getting all your thoughts onto paper. And it doesn't have to be pretty. There's no rhyme or reason. If it's line paper, great. If it's not, even better, because you just write where you feel like writing. It could be in a circle, it could be scribbles, but it gets everything out of your head onto paper. You give yourself a set time limit and you write for that time limit. I suggest starting out, 1 minute, but my brain dumps can last up to 30 at this point. And I'll stop. I'll walk away and I'll come back and I'm like, oh, that was good. And I'll start writing all over again. But it helps me to really get everything out. And then I can look at it on a big picture. I've done it with small notebooks, and I've even done it with like the giant Post-it pads, so I can actually put it up and see, I'm like, okay, where am I at and what am I going to do? So starting small, figuring out a time of day, and then either doing the prompts or trying the brain dumping. If you want to do 1 minute, set a timer for 1 minute, just see if you can do it. Put the pen to the paper, physically put the pen to the paper, and don't move your hand until you write something. Because if you lift your hand back up, and then you get distracted. But keeping it there helps you to focus on, what do I want to come from my brain down my arm to my hand to write onto this paper. And it makes it real and it makes it happen. And then once you've done one sentence, it just kind of starts going. It starts flowing. And I have cried over a journal. I have been mad while writing. I have been happy while writing. Just different things, so that it's for you. Journaling is so personal that it can do and be whatever it is that you want it to do and be. It doesn't have to just be like, oh, this is my book of thoughts. It's like, no, this is my book of dreams. This is my book of hope. This is my book of hatred. Like, these are the people that I don't mess with, are the situations that I don't want to deal with anymore. So I tuck them away in this little book, and that's where they stay. But they don't cloud my mind anymore. So just being mindful of why you want to do it, and knowing that journaling is limitless. It can be for whatever it is, and you can do it with your family. It's been a very good tool that I've seen a lot of couples use. I've shared with people. My mom and I, when we don't see eye to eye, we will write letters back and forth to each other. And that's a form of journaling. She used to write me a letter and lay it on my pillow, because you can't argue with a letter. We can talk and have dialogue, and tones and inflections and emotions can sway the conversation. But if I put all my thoughts and feelings on paper and I give it to you, and you have to read it, you read it how you want to interpret it. And then you're able to respond, and we can have a whole open conversation without ever actually saying words to each other, but probably seeing the most purest, raw form of each other, because we're expressing it through written word.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love how it's you've been able to use it with your mom as a way to strengthen that relationship. That's so beautiful. And just as another form of communication, means of communication with the relationship. And you shared so many very practical ways. I love it, because I think we can stay stuck from taking action because we think things need to look a certain way.
Yeah.
Like journaling needs to look a certain way, or a certain self-care activity needs to look a certain way. But that's not true. And that's why I love to offer lots of different options in this podcast, as well as when I'm working with clients one-on-one or in group settings, because it's not going to be the same for everyone.
Right.
And so you mentioned lots of different ways to get started. So for anyone listening right now, I encourage you just to pick one one that resonates with you the most to get started. I wanted to, as you were sharing that, something that came to me was a few sort of fears or obstacles that I do hear people say with regards to journaling. And so I was just curious your thoughts and ideas and what you would tell someone about that. One of those is, sometimes I feel like people may have a fear of putting pen to paper, right? Say they might even set in a 1 minute timer to get started, but they're afraid of getting those first words out because they're afraid that it does need to be perfect. And you have addressed a bit of that it does not. But what else would you say? Like if there's that resistance to getting started because that fear that it has to look a certain way or be perfect, what's something that you would say to someone to actually just get that first word on the paper? Because as you said, once you get started, you can kind of keep going.
Yeah.
But what about that first word?
Sometimes you have to kind of play with yourself and play tricks on your mind. Like, I have written my name 1,000 times. Like, just it's like Lindsey, Lindsey, Lindsey. And that's just me, right? Like, I know who I am. If I don't know anything else, I know my name, right? I can write my name on this paper, and I would write it, and I keep writing it, and then it'd be like, it turned into Lindsey is, and then that allows me to go into it, talk about myself. I've done a thing where I wrote out the alphabet just because, like, I'm like, I have ADHD, so my brain does this all the time. And so to just kind of calm myself to start, I'm like A, B, C, D, E, and I will write out the alphabet. And that's almost like me counting backwards and like calming myself down so that I can start writing. It's mind tricks, little things. Like, what do you like? What can you talk about without thought? It's like, oh, I love my dog. Okay, write his name down. Let's talk about your dog. Let's talk about Bruno or whatever his name is, or like, oh, my daughter. Okay, like, write her name down. But putting something on the paper that without a shadow of a doubt has big feelings attached to it for you, that'll get the nervousness away because you're writing about something you care about. It's like, when you were in school, they're like, oh, write a letter to your mom for Mother's Day. Oh, I can do that. That's my mom. Like, no problem. Oh, you're so pretty and you cook me meals. And, 5-year-olds can do that. And it's the same thing. We have to get away from thinking that things have to be perfect, especially when they're for us, because we are not perfect people. So we won't produce anything that is perfect. But when it's journaling, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be personal. It just has to resonate with you. So start with something simple. Sometimes, like, really easy things. Like, what did you eat today? What time did you wake up this morning? Like, this morning I woke up at 8:04 and I felt tired. It's like, and then this, and I had this dream, and the night before this happened. And then before you know it, you filled out of a page and a half just because you started with something very simple. So don't overthink it.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that partially because it actually leads into and answers the second question that I had, like the second sort of fear that I've heard come up with people I've worked with, which is, a fear of what will come out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because thinking of journaling as being deeply personal,
Yeah.
right? And then thinking that thinking that it may need to be a place where we go to all of those dark, hard places within ourselves as well. And kind of what you shared here is, yes, it can be that. And yes, we can get to that place, but maybe that's not the place that you start.
Yeah.
Right? If you're not ready for it.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And that's completely valid. Maybe the place you start is with it almost being a record of the things that you know for sure to be true, right? Who you like. I was going to say who you are, but that's a pretty big question if we really ask who you are.
It is.
But who
it
you
can
are
get
in
multi-layered.
terms of, yeah, exactly. But who you are in terms of, like you said, your name, right?
Yeah.
Like writing down your name. And then, I could see, I haven't done that as a practice, but I could see as you were describing it, I could sort of visualize myself doing that. And where I visualize myself going with that is that could easily turn into some like some affirmations or how I'm feeling that day, or and so just starting somewhere. I love that. And then I also thought it was really a really creative idea that I haven't heard before, because it's so new as well, is just like using AI. Like, we're all looking for seeing and getting exposed to different and creative ways to make the best out of AI.
Yes.
But what a fun way to just type into ChatGPT, this is kind of what I'm going through, or this is how old I am, and this
giving it specifics,
and give me some journal prompts to get started. So I love that as well. So we went over a lot of really, we addressed some benefits of journaling, how we've both used it to some extent. We've addressed some obstacles and fears around journaling, and you've offered so many practical tips and tools for someone to get started. Thank you so much for being here. As we begin to wrap up the episode, can you share with our listeners a few things? One, where they can learn more about Vision Driven 757 and the work you're doing there.
Yes.
And then also, as I mentioned at the start of the episode, you facilitated a journaling workshop at my event. And then I also had the opportunity about a month or two later to hear you speak at another event on this. And I know that you are offering more speaking engagements related to this and other topics. So how people can kind of get in touch with you about that as well.
Yes, of course. So for Vision Driven 757, it can be followed on all social media sites, Vision Driven 757, and our website is www.visiondriven757.org. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. For me personally, I do facilitate workshops, I do empowerment, speaking, panel discussions, and I'm all about community, everything community. Journaling is how I keep myself sane, but my heart work lies into empowering the community and ensuring that we live this life together and do it better together, right? And so I can be found Lindsey A VA on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and then Lindsey Anderson on LinkedIn and Facebook.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. And I will include all of those links in the show notes below. I know you have so many choices for how to spend your time. So I thank you for being here today with Essential Self-Care. As a gift, download your free workbook, 6 simple yet powerful steps to create your radiant life at radiantlivinginstitute.com and start your journey to a more radiant you.